Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. We are Robin and Graham. We hope you've enjoyed watching our Southeast Asia series.
The main goal of our channel is to help you guys get a better understanding of what it could be like when you travel to these countries by yourself. And we've posted many videos for each of the countries that we've been to, but we know not everyone has the time to watch all of them. So we've decided to create an ultimate backpacking guide to each of the countries that we went to on our trip to Southeast Asia, so that you have all of the information that you might possibly need when planning for your trip. So the islands that we chose to visit was Bali, Nusa Penida, Gili Air, and Lombok. And we found that there was just a really nice, slow kind of island life atmosphere surrounding all of them to different degrees, but that kind of played throughout all of them, which we absolutely loved. Of course, when you're on an island, there's so many beautiful beaches. You get amazing sunset views from pretty much wherever you are. It's also a really social atmosphere, so there's a lot of clubs, restaurants, cafes, local shops, just like anything you could possibly think of. It is pretty westernized and pretty touristy. I will say that when people say they're going to Indonesia, they typically go to the islands that we went to on this trip.
Yeah.
But honestly, the nature and the sights that we saw were so beautiful that it, to us, was still worth it to give it a go. So to start out this video, we thought we would go through a couple helpful tips, just kind of general knowledge that applies to all of the islands that you're going to be going to, and probably would extend out to different islands in Indonesia as well. So to start off, we're going to talk about currency. Now the currency in Indonesia is the Indonesia rupiah, I think is how you say it. Now, conversions can be kind of tricky. You have to do a lot of math. So what Graham and I did, there is an app called XE that we use for all of our currency exchange. It's what you see pop up on all of our videos. We find it super reliable and it's so easy to just quickly type it in. Make sure you're not getting scammed or overcharged or anything like that. So I would have that on your phone.
Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about the language barrier. This was definitely something that I was a bit worried about. First off, there's a lot of English that is spoken in Bali especially. I think it's probably because of the large amount of tourists that they see every year. However, we do recommend that you learn at least a couple of phrases before you go. We're going to teach you two really quick here. Robin's going to explain them for you because she's better at it than I am.
It's just a nice gesture. Even if you butcher the pronunciation, the fact that you try to speak their language does go a long way. So we always learn hello and thank you whenever we go to a new country. If it's easy, we learn goodbye. Goodbye was not easy in Indonesian, so we didn't learn it. So we learned hello, which is halo, and then terima kasih is how you say thank you.
Additionally, with the language, we also recommend downloading the Google Translate app onto your phone and then go into that Google Translate app and download the Indonesian language onto Google Translate. This will allow you to use it offline. This also allows you to scan any menu or sign that is in Indonesian to the language that you would like to read it in, which obviously is very helpful for anything that you can't read.
A couple other apps we would recommend downloading is Booking.com or Hostelworld for any of your accommodation needs, One2Go Asia, Grab and Gojek for transportation, and then Viator and Get Your Guide for any activities.
Okay, next thing that a lot of people worry about when they go traveling is how they're going to use their phone. We tried to do an eSIM.
You tried to do an eSIM.
I am not technologically advanced by any means. So my eSIM, I could not get to work and was a bit frustrated with it, in all honesty. So I opted to just scrap the eSIM and go for a physical SIM card. So we went with Telkomsel. Additionally, when you go get your physical SIM card, make sure you bring your passport. They are going to ask you for it and you are going to need it.
Next, we're going to talk about money. So how you're going to actually pay for the things that you want to do and the places that you want to stay at. Now, for all of the countries that we actually went to, cash is always best. Now in Indonesia, we found that if you wanted to get anything off of the street, most local places, they're only going to accept cash. However, Bali is quite touristy, quite westernized, so if you do tend to go to the higher end spots, they most likely will take card, but I wouldn't guarantee it. Additionally, we found that when we were booking accommodation, we usually book it online, and lots of the time it asked us to pay in cash when we got to the site, which sometimes Graham and I would stay at a place for multiple nights, and that's a lot of cash to carry on you at one time. So our strategy was to get to the place and then find an ATM. However, on the smaller islands like Nusa Penida or the less touristy ones like Lombok, getting to an ATM can be a little bit tricky. So in those cases, if your accommodation asks for you to pay it in cash, I would have that cash on hand at the time that you get to the island.
Also, before we move on, I just wanted to touch on tipping a little bit. Tipping is not very common, but it is always nice, again, like Robin said, to have some cash on hand, just in case that is an expectation that they have, then you're not stuck in an awkward situation.
Next thing, you cannot drink the tap water. The tap water is not safe for you to drink at, like, I'm pretty sure any parts of Indonesia, but bottled water is super cheap and you can get it anywhere. If you want to save on your plastic use, we use a water bottle called the Grail GeoPress. We didn't have any health problems using that water bottle throughout our whole trip. There was quite a few times that we did just forget to bring it. It's a little bit heavier, so we did get the plastic water bottles, but it does save your overall waste.
Next thing to know about Indonesia is that you need to expect things to run a little bit behind schedule. Nobody really there is ever in a rush, and it's definitely a place that's on island time. Something that we learned is to just kind of go with the flow and enjoy the process of getting to our next destination, because there's lots of traffic, there's lots of tourists, lots of people, and what's the rush, really? We'll all get there eventually.
Another thing we want to talk about, and it's probably already on your itinerary if you are coming to Indonesia, is visiting temples. Now, for women, it's expected that your shoulders and your knees need to be covered. I really honestly tried my best to pack my covering.
Even though it may not have looked like it in the videos.
I tried to always have a long sleeve or something to cover my shoulders and a sarong to cover my knees. But there was quite a few times where I did forget to pack it because it is like 30-something degrees Celsius. The last thing on my mind is to bring more layers. Luckily with Indonesia, I did find that at most, if not all of the temples that we went to had something for you to borrow. And if you did have to pay, it was like a super small sum. And it came into handy for you because sometimes men do need to have their knees covered, and Graham definitely wasn't wearing pants when it was that hot, so he would always borrow something from the temple, and the whole process was just really easy.
So the best time to visit Indonesia is between April and October because it's their dry season. We were lucky enough to get there in September and enjoyed blue skies and hot weather pretty much our entire time there. However, that also means that's when everybody else gets to go to Indonesia and looks to go to Indonesia. So if you're not a fan of tourists and don't care as much about having beautiful weather every single day, although very nice, maybe try the shoulder season outside of October and April. You might have some more luck with booking tours and booking accommodations and honestly just having less people there. Okay, our last helpful tip is to talk about Indonesia visas. So as you guys know, Robin and I are Canadians. So if you're not a Canadian, you could probably skip ahead a little bit if you'd like. But we found that you needed to do an Indonesia e-visa. You can get one on arrival, but you can also fill out the form 48 hours ahead of time. At least to save yourself some time once you arrive in the country. Warning, make sure you spell all of your name correct and you enter your correct birthday, because Robin made one mistake on hers and unfortunately had to pay for a brand new visa on arrival, which thankfully we had cash when we arrived, or else we've been stuck in a bit of a sticky situation. So
yes, because the visa on arrival is 500 rupiah cash. Now, it's a little bit difficult to have cash on hand right away when you just get to a country, so just be aware. Recommend doing it online because then you can pay with card. So we do want to spend a little part of this video talking about transportation because there is no to very little public transportation in Indonesia. The main way to get around is essentially their Uber, which is called Grab or Gojek. Now, Grab and Gojek works the same way in that there's an app that you use online to book your driver. You can see their profile, see the reviews, so we did find it really safe. There's two options. You can either get a car or you can get a scooter. And we definitely recommend if you are in the more southern region of Bali that is so congested with people and places that only get the scooter if possible because your driver will weave in and out of traffic and take a fraction of the time a car would.
Get the apps before you leave your home country because you're going to land in Indonesia, you're going to say, crap, I need my Grab app, and then it's going to ask you to verify it via text message, and you won't be able to do that because you're in Indonesia already and you can't receive those texts. So make sure you do it even a couple of days, couple of weeks before you go, just to make sure everything is running smoothly. And so next, we're going to talk about private taxis. So additionally with Grab and Gojek, you can book private taxis. These are typically done through hotels, Airbnb hosts, things like that.
Flagging them down generally. They're the people that are waiting, trying to yell at you as you leave the airport, the ferry port, the wherever you are.
Couple things with them. Definitely don't take the first price that they offer you. I would say pull up the same ride on a Grab or Gojek app, show it to the private taxi member and say, I want this price or I'm going to book this one. Definitely be prepared to haggle because they're going to overcharge you if you accept that first one. And honestly, Southeast Asia, you got to learn how to haggle.
But by far the easiest mode of transportation is renting a scooter yourself. We found that you could rent a scooter between 80 to 100 rupiah for the day. Now, if you're traveling with, more than one person, then you're essentially splitting that cost and it is way more cost effective than you both getting Grab and Gojek for every location that you want to see that day. We never had issues renting any of our scooters. Generally, they either want to keep your passport or have a damage deposit that you give them before you're able to take that scooter. And we do recommend to take a video of the scooter and of all the damages that are on that scooter before you actually leave the place that you're renting that scooter from, because although we didn't run into it, we have heard stories of tourists trying to return their scooters and that person pointing out these damages that were already there but blaming it on the tourist and then having them charged for it. So just keep that in mind.
So all of this information is really, really handy on Bali, but when it comes to Lombok, it's a little bit different. So on Lombok, they typically don't use Grab or Gojek as much as they do on Bali. They use an app called Bluebird, which is a private taxi service that you can book rides in advance with, or you can hail taxis with, I believe.
It's a metered taxi.
Yeah, it's a metered taxi. But we also found that renting a scooter there is very easy. The roads there are really nice, and even double lane highways at sometimes. So definitely check out renting a scooter there, because you'll have a great time driving it around the island.
The last mode of transportation that we took in Indonesia was ferries. And I will say, slow ferries are always the best ferries in our opinion. We are not on the ocean a lot, and you hear a lot of horror stories about the boats that go to and from Bali. Slow ferries are generally bigger ferries, so they don't feel the waves as much as like the little speedboats. So that's kind of what we stuck to, and for the most part, it was okay. I would say we tried to.
We managed.
But we're also just nervous on the water anyways. Luckily, we have no horror stories to tell you from our ferry rides. They went all okay. But in our opinion, slow is always better.
Okay, so now that we've broken down some helpful tips and things to look out for while you're on your trip in Indonesia, we wanted to walk through kind of step by step all of the locations that we visited and give a bit of a breakdown of things you can expect, where to stay, where we stayed, and activities to do. So if you're looking for a specific place in Indonesia, check out the description below and we'll timestamp everything so you can go right to the timestamp and find your location. Okay, so our first stop on our trip in Indonesia was in Kuta. So Kuta is located very, very close to the Denpasar airport, which is the international airport.
So when you leave the airport, you're going to be overwhelmed right away by a whole bunch of people trying to get you in their taxi. Ignore them. Continue walking. You kind of walk through what looks like a shopping mall, honestly. I don't exactly know what it is. And then when you pop out on the other side, you'll actually see the Grab and Gojek booths that you can book your cars from, because they can't actually come into the airport area. You have to go to their designated spots.
We found Kuta to be very family friendly and a great place to kind of welcome yourself to Indonesia, like we said. It's got some great beaches, there's some surfing, great eats, there's a party street on Legion Street.
Plus, we find that since it's so easy to get to from the airport, it's a great way to sleep off your jet lag.
So during our time in Kuta, we stayed at the Gora Beach Inn. I think it was about $20-ish a night, which is a little bit on the cheaper side, which is actually really nice to start our time off. It had a pool and some great Wi-Fi and really did everything that we need. Kuta, yes, is an awesome place to stay and an awesome place to check out. However, there's definitely more to Bali than what is offered in Kuta. So Robin and I kind of used it as a place to land, get comfortable, get our bearings, get some cash, and get sorted for our next month in Indonesia. So we only stayed a few days, I think 1 or 2 days in total. We'd recommend doing a similar thing because there's definitely more to Indonesia than there is offered in Kuta.
The next place we went to after Kuta was actually to the island of Nusa Penida, because you need to access it through the Sanur port, which just happened to be pretty close to Kuta, which is why we decided to head there next. The port itself was very easy to manage. We got a ferry that we booked on 12Go Asia that went to the west port of Nusa Penida. I think there's 2 different ones. The west one is called the Banjar Nia Harbor, I believe. These ferries run pretty frequently. I would say Nusa Penida is best known for its beautiful white sand beaches, its stunning cliffside viewpoints, and all the little islands around it. It was honestly so picturesque. It's what you see on Instagram. So we were curious if it was going to be worth it or overhyped. And although there was a lot of tourists, the sights were beautiful.
100% worth it.
We absolutely loved it. That was our first time renting a scooter on the island too, so we were having fun just kind of riding around. I will say that Nusa Penida is bigger than you think if you are renting a scooter, because there aren't as many roads. We did have to backtrack a lot of the time to see the things that we wanted to see. So give yourself enough time. Maybe pick and choose your top favorite, because you're probably going to do less in a day than you think. Where we chose to locate ourselves was on the west side of the island at the Penida Social House and Sports Bar, which funny enough happens to be owned by people also from Saskatchewan, Canada. So that was just like a funny coincidence at the beginning of our trip. We split up our days on Nusa Penida based on what was on the west side and what was on the east side. So we started with what was on the west side because that had Clinking Beach, that viewpoint. There's a really sketchy but super fun walk to the beach that we recommend doing.
It's more of a hike and rock climbing than a walk, I'll say that.
But we did start our day off with that. We also saw Angel's Billabong and the Broken Beach when we were on the west side. When we moved on to the east side of the island, what we saw was the Tembling Forest and Beach. We saw the Thousand Island viewpoint, which was one of my favorite, as well as Diamond Beach. Honestly, they were all just, I found, so unique and different, just with the landscapes that you were looking out to and the open ocean. So we did really enjoy our time on Nusa Penida. Yeah. We had 2 full days here, so we stayed 3 nights. We did find that we spent a lot of each day driving around, and we couldn't really spend as much time relaxing maybe as we would have wanted to at each of the locations that we went to. So we would probably recommend 3 to 4 nights if you're there, depending on how busy you want it to be as you're driving around.
Okay, after our awesome time on Nusa Penida, we made the trek from there all the way to Canggu. We did that same ferry ride just back to the same harbor and then hopped in a grab to go to Canggu. So Canggu is definitely the ultimate beach, surf, and party scene.
So we actually chose to stay outside of the main Canggu region at a hotel called the Ume. We probably wouldn't recommend it for you guys to stay at because there's really no point to be outside of the main Canggu area if you're there to visit Canggu. Because we had other priorities, that's where we chose to stay. But we would recommend that you choose somewhere in the main Canggu area so that you have access to the nightlife, the beaches, the restaurants, the shops, all of that. You have to take less Grab and Gojek to get from place to place. So just for ease, that's probably where you want to base yourself. Honestly, you probably only need about 1 to 2 nights in Canggu. That's from our opinion though, because Canggu isn't really our style. If we wanted to see it, we would probably only spend 1 to 2 nights there.
Yeah.
If you like that kind of stuff, 2 to 3 nights I think would be plenty.
Okay, to head from Canggu on the coast to the inner northern city of Ubud, also known as one of our favorite places in Indonesia and our whole trip, I would say. We booked ourselves a simple Grab from Canggu to Ubud. Now this trip is about an hour long drive, but if you hit traffic, this is known to take almost 3 hours. So this is definitely something you need to do early. We left our hotel in Canggu at about 6 a.m. and it still took us over an hour. So if you make that trip, get there early.
Yeah, because on travel days you have all of your bags, so it really, because we front and back our backpacks, it would be so cruel to get a Grab bike and have our poor driver squished in the front with all of our stuff. So we always choose to take a car, which is why we choose to go earlier. I like thinking of Ubud as kind of the heart of Bali.
Yeah.
It's very laid back because it attracts a lot of like yoga people, spiritual people, everyone. It's kind of like almost a hippie culture, but we absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
It's right in the jungle, so you're getting a completely different view from all of the other parts that we had saw on Bali so far. Amazing food. We found one of our favorite restaurants in all of Indonesia based on where we were staying. There is one main or a couple main streets in Ubud. It is quite spread out, so we would kind of recommend basing yourself around those main roads. That is where we based ourselves. We stayed at the Pak Vo guest house. So we honestly found it was a terrific spot. It was on a side road just off of it, so we didn't hear as much of the noise. It had a pool, and like we said, it's a couple doors down from one of our favorite restaurants called Sakar Sari. And probably out of the like 6 days we spent there, we ate there 4 times. They definitely recognized us when we would walk in. And check it out if you're there. Try the nasi campur if you haven't already. It was delicious. Plus, for the 5 nights that we stayed, it was $26 a night, which is super reasonable.
Hard to beat. Ubud is a great place to visit for several reasons because it's got so many amazing things to do. So here are a few things that we did. Visit the Turda Temple and to take part in the water ritual. Hike up Mount Batur for a sunrise hike. Visit the monkey sanctuary. Enjoy several amazing waterfalls. Take in the Tegalang rice terraces. Check out the art market, check out the shopping markets, and like I said, if you're into yoga, there's lots of classes, workshops, and retreats.
So if that sounds like something you're into as well, we would recommend staying about 6 nights in Ubud. More, of course, if you're going to take part in like retreats and things like that, but we found 6 nights gave us the perfect amount of time to do some of the driving because some of these things are located outside of the area, so you will spend some of your day driving to and from those places. So 6 nights is best. The next place we went to after Ubud was Gili Air. Now we had 2 options to get there. We could take a shorter Grab back to the Senur ferry port and take a longer ferry to get to Gili Air. Or we could take a longer Grab to get to Padang Bay ferry port, which is more north, and then take a shorter ferry to Gili Air. I would rather be in a car than a boat, so
Yep, me
we went
too.
with the second option, and honestly, it wasn't too bad. Keep in mind when you do get to Gili Air, there is a island tax that you need to pay. We were a little bit thrown off just because we didn't know if they were just trying to target us as tourists, but no, everyone has to pay this island tax. It's 25,000 rupiah. So really not that bad, but just be expected to have a little bit of cash on you to pay that when you get to the island. After making it past the ferry port, it's time to start walking because there are no vehicles on the island of Gili Air. There is horse and buggy or bike ride or your own 2 feet. So we unfortunately actually booked a hotel on the other side of the island, but luckily it only takes 20 minutes to walk the whole thing, so it really wasn't that bad.
Okay, so there are 3 Gili Islands. We only explored Gili Air, and we've learned that Gili Air is kind of the peaceful, calm place to go to rest, relax, and enjoy your time there. Gili T is a little bit more of the party atmosphere, and Gili Mino.
It's kind of just resorts and for
yeah.
honeymooners.
Yeah. We stayed at the Belenggu homestay. This place had a wonderful pool. The only downside is that the bathroom was actually open air. So be prepared to have a couple of bug friends come meet you. And we ended up spending $38 a night for the pool and breakfast included in our stay there.
Like many of the islands in Indonesia, Gili Air is known for its beautiful beaches and beach clubs that give you time to rest and relax. What we did is we actually walked around the whole island because again, it's just so small, so you can kind of pick and choose where you want to sit. There's lots of wonderful music being played. There's lots of restaurants for you to go at. So we just had a really enjoyable time walking and exploring literally the whole island.
But if you're not into just hanging out on the beach, there is some snorkeling in the area, and it is absolutely world class. Mm-hmm. So you can take the short boat ride back to Gili T and take in some of the amazing marine wildlife that's in the area. So they have actually sunken some scooters. They have some statues in the water. Turtle Cove is right there. And again, the marine wildlife is spectacular there.
We spent 5 nights on the island of Gili Air. We're not as much lay at the beach all day long type of people, so we probably would recommend, if you're like us, do 3 to 4 nights. Unless you're looking for a nice spot to relax, then obviously you can extend your trip.
Once we finished our amazing time on Gili Air, we took the very short boat ride over to Lombok. All you have to do is hop on the local ferry taxi, is that, I guess you could call it. Just be warned that when you get to Lombok, the harbor can be quite overwhelming, I guess. There's a lot of people that are going to start offering you rides.
Lombok, for the most part, is what people consider Bali to be like a couple of years ago, like maybe a decade or so ago. So it really isn't as built for tourists as Bali is. There are some major roads which are really well maintained, but it's just not really easy to get from place to place. So even though we wanted to stay in the south, there wasn't a ferry that we could take down there directly, and there wasn't really like a bus that we could figure out to get down there. So Graham did have to haggle with a guy for a little while we were having our coffee to get a good price to take us down to the Kuta region.
And like Robin said, we stayed in Kuta, Lombok at the Join homestay. Had a pool, breakfast included. The Wi-Fi was a bit spotty at times.
It was not great.
But it only came to $21 a night, which, because it was a little ways out of the town site, was a little bit cheaper, which was really nice after a bit of an expensive time in Gili Air. So
we kind of used Kuta as our hub to explore the whole island of Lombok. Now, if we were to go back, we would change that, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But the island of Lombok has so much beautiful nature that really hasn't been touched by tourism or ruined by tourism yet. So we visited a couple of the waterfalls in the area. They were a decent drive away, but again, the roads were really nice, so it was easy. It was just a long ride. There is some beautiful beaches to go at too that are right by the Kuta region. I would say that it is kind of more chill and laid back part of Lombok with all of those like surfer beaches.
Yeah.
It's actually where Graham went surfing.
It had a great beginner surf. We made a great deal with the guy for a beach bed. Fantastic place to learn how to surf again.
We stayed in Lombok for 5 nights, and I would say that would be enough time to spend in Lombok to see everything you want to see. However, we really underestimated how far the things that we wanted to see were from where we were staying. If we were to go back again, we would probably situate ourselves somewhere up north to see all of those waterfalls and beautiful nature areas before coming and enjoying the beaches in the Kuta region.
For sure.
Because I feel like we only needed 3 days in the south and we didn't need the full 5 days.
Yeah. Okay, from Lombok, we head to our last stop in Bali. So this time we decided to compare some prices and try to stay out of the water as much as possible. So we actually ended up taking a flight from Lombok back to Denpasar Airport, and then we ended up taking a grab from the Denpasar Airport down to our place in Uluwatu.
We just really honestly heard so many horror stories that we would prefer, if it's going to be that close in prices, we're gonna fly or take a ferry. Uluwatu is probably one of the most popular places to go when you're visiting the island of Bali. If you're looking especially for a relaxed surf atmosphere with good views and lots of restaurants and shops. The coast is placed on a cliff, so you get stunning views of the ocean. Now, although it is a surf haven, not all of the beaches are beginner surf friendly.
No.
You can watch some pretty impressive people surf from the coast that would not be safe for Graham and I to get into the water.
Even close.
So make sure you do your research if you are looking to surf in the Uluwatu region. Honestly, it was probably one of our favorite stops in Indonesia apart from Ubud, and the tourists did not ruin it at all. I would definitely put it on your itinerary.
We ended up staying at the place called the YouTube Hotel, which is kind of funny to us. We laugh every time. This was actually our last stop in Indonesia, so we did decide to splurge a little bit on this place. And so this place cost us about $40 a night. It was a little bit inland, but we found that this was actually a really nice spot to be, pretty close to the main strip, if not on the main strip, I believe.
Yeah.
Which made it really easy to get to the coast and get to different spots that we wanted to check out. To get to some of these places from the YouTube Hotel, we actually ended up renting a scooter for 2 days. It is a busier part of Bali, so definitely make sure you're comfortable riding a scooter and driving a scooter before you pay for that rental. I was pretty confident driving it by this point, so we felt comfortable renting one. But it definitely made our trip easier to explore the best lookout points and beaches that Uluwatu has.
Yeah, because if you stay more inland, you're going to be using Grab and Gojek a lot.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to do that, pick a place on the coast. But if you want kind of the flexibility, the inland is best. Plus, you can situate yourself, just like we did, next to one of our favorite breakfast spots called My Bali Coffee. It just happened to be, I think, like a 10-minute walk down. And
Amazing
we
spot.
went there on our first day, and we went back every single day. The ladies that work there are so unbelievably kind. They recognize us. They treat you like friends and family, and it was just such a good vibe.
Yeah.
Go check it out. If you have to drive there, it's worth the drive.
Yeah. Great prices, great people, great food. One of the main spots to stop in Uluwatu is at the Uluwatu Temple. So we went there in the evening time because we wanted to watch the Kikak fire dance. So the Kikak fire dance actually takes part in the Uluwatu Temple. One thing that we learned is get in line early for the fire dance ticket.
I think we were standing there like an hour before the booth opened for tickets.
Yeah, and the line got incredibly long. So go early for your tickets.
We stayed in Uluwatu for 5 nights. We kind of wanted to use it as like a rest and relax, soak up the sun, go swimming in the ocean location before we left Indonesia. So honestly, 5 nights was perfect. However, if you are just using it as like a stopover before you go somewhere else in Bali, maybe you choose to do less. So that brings us to the end of the route that we took in Indonesia, but there was a couple spots that we didn't get to that we wanted to share with you just in case you might be interested. The first one is Sanur. So we use that as our gateway to the other islands because that's where the ferry port is. However, we did hear that it is really laid back, it's great for water activities, and it's super family friendly. So you might want to check that out if that's something that interests you.
A second place that you might want to visit is Seminyak. Seminyak is very, very similar and very, very close to Canggu.
Another place is Gili Trawangan, or Gili T as most people call it. It's just 2 over from Gili Air, and I think we briefly mentioned it before. It's a very young atmosphere, I would say, that goes there because it is all about nightlife and beach clubs, and it's louder and a little bit more chaotic.
The next place that you may want to check out is called Lovina Beach. This is actually up in the north of Bali, which isn't really an area that we got to explore at all, unfortunately. It's a place that is really known for great diving and snorkeling, and apparently, from what we've read, there's also dolphins in the area.
A lot of dolphins in the area. Plus, if you are heading up north anyways, then you can add now I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, the Alun Danu Baratan Temple, which is I'm really sad that we didn't get there. You can do it as a day trip from Ubud, but we were just doing so much driving that to us at the time it wasn't worth it, but I did wish we went and saw it. It's a temple that sits on a lake surrounded by mountains. It's kind of like a spot that you go see and take in and then you continue on. So it makes a great stop for if you're heading up north. Now, if you know Graham and I, you know we love food. So we can't make a ultimate backpacking guide to Indonesia without telling you some of the wonderful local dishes that we tried when we were there. We're not going to go in depth into any of them. If you watch any of our videos, we talk about them very extensively, it feels like. So just quickly, we recommend nasi goreng, mee goreng, chicken satay, gado-gado, beef rendang, and nasi campur.
That kind of is it. That's everything that we've got about our incredible time that we spent in Indonesia. Overall, Indonesia is a wonderful, wonderful country, and it's an absolutely awesome place to start your travels in Southeast Asia.
So with that being said, we hope you have a wonderful time in Indonesia and that you found this video to be helpful in your planning, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!
Honestly, enjoy the journey because it's a lot of... What am I saying?
I have no idea what you're saying. I was just like, what the heck? Restful and relaxful.
No, I don't know what I'm saying. So Robin here is going to give you a display of how to... Physical eSIMs, that's tough stuff.
But. Another... Jeez.
I'm good. Nice work. That's kind of sick.
Thank you. Done.
Nice.
Yay.